Hey man, let's break the game wide open. You've been told to always communicate, always be honest, always explain yourself. But here's the harsh truth. Most men don't want to hear. Ghosting is one of the most brutally effective ways to pull women emotionally. Not because it's kind, not because it's respectful, but because it triggers something deep in their psychology. When done from a place of power, not pettiness, it flips the dynamic. It sends a message louder than words ever could. I don't need you, I don't chase, I walk. And when a woman feels that shift in energy, that sudden void of attention, her entire system goes into overdrive. That silence becomes louder than a love letter. Now let's get one thing straight. This isn't about being manipulative. This isn't about playing games to hurt people. This is about understanding the reality of feminine psychology. Because women don't respond to logic, they respond to emotion, and emotional spikes, whether good or bad, create obsession. That's why the guy who disappears is often the one she thinks about the most. He left a gap, an open loop, a silence she can't decode. And that emotional discomfort forces her to start chasing, not because you're trying to hurt her, but because you've unplugged your validation. When you ghost a woman after she disrespected you, pulled away, flaked, or tested your value, what you're really doing is removing the energy supply. You're saying, I'm not here to explain myself, I'm not here to fix what you broke, I'm done. And that power move is more attractive than any long paragraph, any passive-aggressive response, or any needy reaction, because she expects you to fight for her, she expects you to prove yourself. But when you don't, when you walk away without warning, you become the one thing she can't stand to lose: mystery. Ghosting, when done with purpose, not emotion, communicates self-respect. It says, you had access, you lost it. It's the cleanest, most direct way to protect your frame. Because let's be real, how many times have you explained yourself to a woman who already checked out? How many paragraphs have you written that she barely read? How many times have you tried to fix something she wanted to break just to see how you'd react? Bro, stop talking, just disappear. Let your absence speak for you, because that's the only language some women respect. And here's what makes it so effective. Silence forces reflection. When you ghost a woman who's used to attention, who's used to men crawling back, who's used to winning with minimal effort, your silence becomes unbearable. She replays everything, overthinks every moment, starts stalking your page, wondering who you're with, if she messed up, if you're done. And suddenly, the power dynamic shifts. You're not just the guy who walked away, you're the guy she can't stop thinking about. Not because you chased, but because you withdrew completely. A woman will never chase a man who's always available. She may appreciate him, she may even like him, but she won't crave him. She craves the man who creates emotional distance, the one who gives and then takes away, the one who creates presence, then disappears into mystery. That's what ghosting does. It disrupts her emotional pattern. It makes her feel like she lost something that isn't easily replaced. And in a world where most men are texting, calling, double messaging, your silence becomes amplified attraction. Here's where most men mess it up. They ghost from a place of weakness, not strength. They disappear because they're hurt, insecure, or trying to make her chase. That's not power, that's passive aggression. Real ghosting, the kind that pulls her emotionally, is done with full detachment. You ghost not because you're triggered, but because you're uninterested in disrespect. She flaked, you vanish. She played games, you remove access. She got inconsistent, you exit without warning. No closure, no drama, just clean, unshakable silence. That's strength, and that's what women respect long after words are forgotten. It's psychological warfare, but only if you use it ethically. Ghosting isn't for revenge, it's for reclamation of power, because if she didn't value your presence, why would you keep giving it? If she didn't appreciate your effort, why would you keep explaining yourself? A high-value man doesn't chase confusion. He doesn't argue with mixed signals. He doesn't plead for attention. He disappears, silently, completely. And that void, that unexplained exit, that becomes her emotional obsession. She won't admit it, but she'll feel it every time she opens her phone and doesn't see your name. Understand this, women equate silence with status. The guy who doesn't reach out must have options. The guy who isn't bothered must be busy with something better. That's how they think. Your absence becomes evidence of value. It forces her to reevaluate what she lost, and the more she senses that you're unaffected, the more she starts to question her own decision. Ghosting creates scarcity, and in the female mind, scarcity equals worth. That's the paradox. By walking away, you make her want to come closer, and don't mistake ghosting for immaturity. It's not about avoiding conflict, it's about protecting peace. When you stop explaining yourself to people who never listened, when you stop fighting for clarity from someone who thrived on confusion, when you stop defending your worth to someone who never valued it, that's not childish, that's evolved. Ghosting is emotional discipline. It's you saying, this is where I end, this is where you no longer have access. Not with a scream, not with a text, but with silence. And in that silence, you rise, and if she ever had real feelings for you, she spirals. The beauty of ghosting is that it interrupts the script. Most women are used to men reacting, explaining, apologizing, pleading for another chance. That's the standard play. But when you ghost, you step out of that weak frame entirely. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability is magnetic to the feminine. She doesn't know where you went, what you're thinking, or why you're suddenly gone, and that gap creates emotional motion. She'll talk to her friends, she'll scroll through old messages, she'll start wondering if you ever cared, and in that emotional chaos, her attraction spikes. Because you're now the mystery man she couldn't control. But listen carefully, you don't ghost every woman. You ghost the ones who disrespected you, who devalued your effort, who weaponized your emotional availability. This isn't about manipulating a woman who was good to you. This is about preserving your frame when a woman tries to walk all over it. It's a boundary, not a punishment. And if you use it from a place of integrity, it becomes a weapon of self-respect, one that separates the boys trying to win her attention from the men who command it. Let's break something down. When a woman starts to lose interest, she often subtly tests your value. She doesn't outright dump you. She just texts less, becomes emotionally colder, takes longer to reply, talks about other guys. These are tests. She wants to see, will you chase harder? Will you cling? Will you beg for clarity? Most men fail. They go into panic mode, thinking more effort equals more love. But when you ghost, you flip the test on her. You say, I see your low investment, and I respond with none. And that counter move, that triggers a panic in her. There's nothing more attractive to a woman than a man who doesn't need her emotional breadcrumbs. When you ghost her after she's been inconsistent, what you're really doing is teaching her how to treat you. You're sending a silent, powerful message. I don't tolerate confusion. And guess what happens? She starts remembering your value. Not just the dates, not just the laughs, but your certainty, your strength, your peace. Because in a world full of weak men trying to fix broken connections, the man who disappears with dignity stands out like fire in the dark. Here's where the game really flips. When she reaches out after you, ghost, and she will. Not always right away. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes weeks. But if she had any emotional interest in you, that silence will gnaw at her. And when she reaches back out, how you respond determines everything. If you come back needy, desperate, emotional, you lose the frame. But if you come back cool, centered, unbothered, you just became 10 times more attractive. Because now she knows you're not the man she can play with. You're the man she has to respect. But don't confuse ghosting with stonewalling. This isn't about emotional immaturity. It's about strategic silence. It's about recognizing when the conversation no longer deserves your energy. It's about knowing that sometimes the most powerful response is none at all. Not because you're cold, but because she created the distance. And instead of chasing to close the gap, you chose to walk away. That's emotional self-control. And that's what makes you impossible to replace in her mind. Ghosting also allows you to reclaim your emotional energy. Because let's be real, man, when you're chasing a woman who doesn't value you, you're draining yourself. Every text, every call, every plan she flakes on, it chips away at your self-worth. But when you ghost, when you go cold, when you go quiet, you start to recalibrate. You stop bleeding energy. You redirect that focus into your fitness, your money, your mission. And that shift, that's what makes you not just more attractive, but more powerful. Don't be afraid to walk away in silence. Because a man who can disappear without warning is a man who knows he doesn't beg for value. And women feel that. They don't consciously say it, but they feel it. That emotional depth, that self-possession, that fire behind your silence. It haunts them because it's rare. Most men cling, most men crack, most men can't handle the discomfort of not being seen. But when you can sit in that discomfort and own it, you become something entirely different, a man of consequence. Ghosting works because it mirrors back her energy. She pulled back, so you vanished. She flaked, so you withdrew. She tested, so you opted out. You didn't argue. You didn't over-explain. You just matched her indifference with indifference. That's what breaks the game. That's what creates emotional disruption. And that disruption, that's what brings her back, if she ever really cared, because your silence reintroduces the value she once took for granted, not with words, not with guilt, but with absence. And here's the final truth for now. Ghosting isn't just silence, it's transformation. It's not about her, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your power, your focus, your emotional clarity. It's about refusing to engage with energy that doesn't feed your growth. And when you ghost the wrong women, you make space for the right ones. You protect your masculine edge, you protect your vision, and you protect your soul from being diluted by disrespect. That's not a game, that's wisdom, that's strategy. And that, brother, is how you pull women, not with effort, but with absence. Now let's get even deeper. When you ghost, you force her to face herself. You remove the emotional distraction of your presence, and suddenly she's left with her own silence, her own decisions, her own actions. She can't hide behind your reassurance. She can't soften the blow with your availability. She has to sit with the fact that she pushed away a man who was solid, and now that man is gone. That's why ghosting hits so hard. It's not about being cruel, it's about refusing to continue feeding a one-sided dynamic. And once she realizes you're not coming back with apologies or explanations, the emotional weight hits her like a truck. What makes ghosting such a sharp, effective move is that it's non-verbal power. You don't tell her, "I'm better than this." You show her. You don't say, "You lost a good one." You become the man she never forgets, because words can be twisted, words can be ignored, but disappearing without warning, that's something a woman remembers for years, especially if every man after you keeps over-explaining, over-texting, over-trying. You'll stand out because you didn't try at all. You left when the respect left. That's legacy energy. That's masculine imprint. And you know what's wild? Sometimes the ghost pulls harder than the presence ever could. Your silence becomes a loop in her mind. She keeps checking your page. She starts wondering if she misjudged you. If maybe you were more valuable than she realized. If maybe the guy she kept in the gray area just vanished into greatness. She'll never admit this. She'll pretend to be unfazed. But internally, she's replaying it. Because you were the one who had the strength to exit without theatrics. You were the one who didn't need closure. That confidence echoes louder than any confession of love. Some of you think ghosting ruins your chance forever. But let me be blunt, if she really valued you, you wouldn't need to ghost. If she was truly invested, she wouldn't put you in a position to pull away. But if you do ghost, and she genuinely had feelings, she'll come back. Women always circle back to strength. And if she doesn't, that silence was your confirmation. That exit was your blessing. Because a woman who lets a man disappear without a second thought is not a woman who was ever emotionally serious in the first place. She wanted attention, not a relationship. There's power in knowing you can ghost and never look back. That you can walk away from beauty, sex, affection, and choose yourself over drama. Because a man who can walk away from what he wants for the sake of what he deserves, that's the man who commands everything. Respect, peace, desire. Because your value isn't tied to her recognition, it's tied to your self-mastery. Ghosting then becomes not an act of abandonment, but an act of emotional sovereignty. You're saying, "I'd rather have nothing than have half of someone who doesn't value me." You have to understand this. Women don't remember every man they dated, but they remember the man who ghosted them when they thought they had control. That move lives in the back of their mind forever. And it's not because you hurt them, it's because you showed them something rare. Emotional detachment. You weren't spiteful, you weren't rude, you were just gone. And every time they think about you, it's not your words they remember, it's your absence. That's what leaves the mark. Not drama, not arguments, silence. But here's the catch, you can only ghost like a king if you've done the inner work. If you're ghosting just to get a reaction, you're still controlled by her. If you're ghosting because you're scared of confrontation, you're still weak. But if you're ghosting because you've seen her energy shift, you've felt the disrespect rise, and you know your value too well to tolerate it, that's powerful. That's the ghost of a man who's too focused on building a legacy to beg for breadcrumbs. That's the ghost she'll never outrun. And don't let anyone shame you out of it. In today's world, where women can pull away, test your patience, and keep you around as emotional insurance, ghosting is a man's shield. It's your way of saying, I see the game, and I refuse to play it. No long texts, no breakdowns, just silence. And when she asks, why didn't you say anything? You don't answer. Because the truth is simple, you already did. Your absence was the loudest sentence she's ever heard. Eventually, you'll reach a place where you don't even need to ghost, you just fade effortlessly. Because your standards are so high, your energy is so sacred, that you automatically repel low-value behavior. You won't ghost because you're mad. You'll ghost because you're done explaining yourself to people who never earned your presence. That's the final form of masculine detachment. When your silence isn't revenge, it's just your lifestyle. A quiet, unapologetic boundary that says, I don't stay where I'm not respected. So remember this, brother, ghosting isn't about disappearing. It's about rising. It's about detaching from disrespect, cutting the emotional cord, taking your power back. When you ghost from strength, not spite, you become the most dangerous kind of man. The man she can't control, can't read, and can't forget. Not because you said the right words, but because you walked away without saying any at all. That's the man she loses sleep over. That's the man who wins the game without playing. And that's the man you become the moment you go silent and never look back.